In the heart of a bustling city, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and streets buzzed with the constant hum of life, there was a small restaurant named Taste of Hope. It wasn't fancy or flashy. It didn't have neon signs or extravagant decor. Instead, it was tucked away in a quiet corner almost hidden from view. The restaurant had just 4 tables, mismatched chairs and walls painted in a faded shade of yellow that once might have been bright but now looked tired. Yet for Mark, its owner, this little place was everything. Mark was a man in his late 30s who carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had always dreamed of owning a restaurant, a cozy spot where people could come together to enjoy good food and feel at home. For years, he worked odd jobs, saving every penny he earned until he finally scraped together enough money to open Taste of Hope. But running a restaurant turned out to be far harder than he ever imagined. Despite his passion for cooking and serving delicious meals, business was painfully slow. Days would go by without a single customer walking through the door, leaving Mark wondering if all his hard work had been for nothing. Every morning, Mark woke up before sunrise. He would walk to the market to pick fresh ingredients, carefully choosing vegetables and spices while trying to stick to his tight budget. Back at the restaurant, he spent hours prepping the kitchen, chopping onions, marinating meats, and boiling sauces. By the time noon rolled around, he was ready to welcome guests, hoping someone would notice the effort he put into each dish. But more often than not, the only company he had during lunchtime was the ticking clock on the wall. Evenings weren't much better. Mark tried everything to attract customers. He posted pictures of his dishes on social media, handed out flyers on busy street corners, and offered discounts to anyone willing to give his restaurant a try. Sometimes a few people would show up, lured by the promise of a cheap meal. They'd compliment the food, saying things like, "This pasta is amazing," or "I can't believe how flavorful this soup is." But compliments alone couldn't pay the bills. Rent was due every month, utilities piled up, and suppliers demanded payment for deliveries. No matter how hard Mark worked, the numbers never added up. One chilly evening, as Mark locked up the restaurant after another quiet day, he noticed something unusual outside. Sitting on the sidewalk across the street was a woman bundled up in a tattered coat, her face pale and drawn. Beside her sat a young boy, no older than 8, huddled close to her for warmth. Their clothes were worn out, patched together in places, and their eyes reflected a mix of fear and exhaustion. Mark paused, feeling a pang of guilt as he watched them shiver in the cold. For a moment he considered turning away. After all, what could he possibly do? His own life was falling apart. He barely had enough money to keep the restaurant running, let alone help strangers. But something about their plight struck a chord deep within him. Maybe it was the way the boy clung to his mother, seeking comfort despite their obvious struggles. Or maybe it was the look of defeat in the woman's eyes, a look Mark knew all too well. Whatever it was, he couldn't ignore it. Taking a deep breath, Mark crossed the street and approached them cautiously. "Are you two okay?" he asked softly, kneeling down to their level so as not to seem intimidating. The woman looked up, startled at first, then embarrassed. She hesitated before responding, her voice trembling. "We're fine," she said, though her tone betrayed her words. "Just resting." Mark wasn't convinced. "Do you have somewhere to stay tonight?" he pressed gently. The woman shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "No," she admitted. "We've been moving from shelter to shelter, but tonight, we don't have anywhere to go." Her son buried his face in her side, clearly overwhelmed by the situation. Mark felt his heart sink. Here he was, worrying about unpaid bills and empty tables while this family had nowhere safe to sleep. Without thinking twice, he extended a hand. "Come inside," he said firmly. "It's freezing out here. You can warm up and eat something." The woman hesitated, unsure whether to trust him. But hunger and desperation won over caution. Slowly, she stood up, pulling her son along with her. Together they followed Mark into the restaurant. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of garlic and herbs. Mark guided them to one of the tables, wrapping them in spare blankets he kept in the storage room. Then, He disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with steaming bowls of soup and slices of freshly baked bread. As the woman and her son ate, Mark introduced himself. He learned that her name was Sarah, and her son was Ethan. They had been homeless for months ever since Sarah lost her job as a nurse due to hospital budget cuts. Unable to keep up with rent payments, they were evicted from their apartment and forced onto the streets. Despite their hardships, Sarah remained determined to protect her son and give him a better future. Watching her talk, Mark saw a resilience that inspired him. That night, Mark made a decision. He couldn't solve all of Sarah and Ethan's problems, but he could offer them temporary shelter. He set up a makeshift bed in the back of the restaurant using blankets and pillows, ensuring they had a safe place to rest. As they settled in, Sarah thanked him repeatedly, her voice filled with gratitude. "You didn't have to do this," she said, "but I'll never forget your kindness." Mark smiled, though his mind raced with doubts. What had he gotten himself into? Could he really afford to take care of 2 more people when he could barely take care of himself? But as he watched Sarah tuck Ethan into bed, he realized something important. Helping others wasn't just about having resources. It was about having heart. And maybe, just maybe, this act of kindness would lead to something greater than he could imagine. Little did Mark know, inviting Sarah and Ethan into his life would change everything, not just for them, but for him as well. The next morning, Mark arrived at Taste of Hope earlier than usual. The sun had barely risen, casting a soft golden glow over the quiet streets. As he unlocked the door and stepped inside, he was surprised to find Sarah and Ethan still there. They were curled up on the makeshift bed he had prepared for them the night before, wrapped tightly in blankets. Their faces looked peaceful, but the weariness etched into their features reminded Mark of the challenges they faced daily. Mark hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to wake them or let them rest a little longer. But just as he turned toward the kitchen, Sarah stirred. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the dim light. When she saw Mark standing nearby, she sat up quickly, looking both startled and embarrassed. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice hoarse from sleep. "We didn't mean to stay this long." Mark shook his head, offering her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about it," he replied. "You're welcome here. How did you sleep?" Sarah glanced at Ethan, who was still asleep beside her, his small frame rising and falling with each breath. "Better than we have in weeks," she admitted softly. "Thank you for everything." Mark nodded, feeling a warmth spread through his shout. He gestured toward the kitchen. "Let me fix you both some breakfast," he said. "It's the least I can do." As Sarah helped him set the table, they began talking more openly. Over plates of scrambled eggs, toast, and steaming cups of tea, Sarah shared more about their lives. She explained how she had once worked as a nurse at a local hospital, loving her job and taking pride in caring for others. But when budget cuts forced layoffs, she found herself unemployed. Without a steady income, rent payments slipped, and soon, she and Ethan were evicted from their apartment. Since then, they had been moving from shelter to shelter, struggling to find stability. Despite the hardships, Sarah remained hopeful. Her determination to provide a better future for Ethan shone through every word she spoke. "I refuse to give up," she told Mark firmly. "Ethan deserves a chance to grow up happy and safe. I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen." Listening to her, Mark felt a renewed sense of purpose. Here was someone who, despite losing nearly everything, refused to let despair win. It was a lesson he needed to hear. For months he had been drowning in self-pity, convinced that his dreams of owning a successful restaurant were slipping away. But Sarah's resilience reminded him that giving up wasn't an option, not when there were people depending on him. After breakfast, Sarah insisted on helping clean up. "I can't just sit here while you work," she said firmly. Mark protested at first, but Sarah wouldn't take no for an answer. Together, they washed dishes, wiped down tables, and swept the floor. Ethan, now awake, watched them curiously from the corner, occasionally chiming in with questions about the restaurant. Why is it called Taste of Hope? Ethan asked suddenly, breaking the silence. His wide eyes sparkled with curiosity. Mark chuckled, pausing mid-sweep. Well, he began, leaning on the broom handle, it's because food has a way of bringing people together. No matter what's going on in life, sharing a meal can make things feel a little brighter. At least that's what I hoped when I named it. Ethan tilted his head thoughtfully. Do you think hope tastes like pancakes? He asked innocently. Sarah laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. Even Mark couldn't help but grin. Maybe, he teased. Why don't we test that theory tomorrow morning? From that day forward, Sarah and Ethan became regular fixtures at the restaurant. In exchange for Mark's generosity, Sarah offered to help out wherever she could. Her experience as a nurse proved invaluable, especially when it came to maintaining cleanliness and hygiene. She suggested implementing stricter protocols for washing hands and sanitizing surfaces, ensuring the restaurant met high standards of safety. Customers began noticing the attention to detail, which boosted their confidence in the establishment. Meanwhile, Ethan's presence brought a new energy to the space. Though shy at first, he gradually warmed up to Mark and the customers. He loved watching Mark cook, often standing by the counter and peppering him with questions about different recipes. What's your favorite dish to make? Ethan asked one afternoon as Mark chopped vegetables for a stir-fry. That's a tough question, Mark replied, pretending to think deeply. But if I had to choose, I'd say lasagna. There's something magical about layering pasta, sauce, and cheese. It's like building a tower of happiness. Ethan giggled, clearly entertained. From that moment on, lasagna became his mission. Whenever Mark prepared it, Ethan would hover nearby, eager to learn the steps. Mark patiently taught him how to mix ingredients, spread layers evenly, and sprinkle cheese just right. The boy soaked up every bit of knowledge, his excitement growing with each lesson. Their bond deepened over time. Mark, who had always dreamed of having a family, found joy in mentoring Ethan. He encouraged the boy's creativity, letting him experiment with flavors and presentation. One day, Ethan proudly presented a plate of Ethan's special sandwich, a quirky concoction of turkey, lettuce, and peanut butter. While unconventional, it earned laughs and praise from everyone who tried it. Word of the unique atmosphere at Taste of Hope began to spread. Customers noticed the friendly dynamic between Mark, Sarah, and Ethan. Conversations flowed easily, laughter filled the air, and strangers left feeling like they belonged. People started recommending the restaurant to friends and family, praising not only the food, but also the genuine care with which Mark and Sarah treated everyone. One customer, a middle-aged woman named Lisa, became particularly fond of the trio. She visited weekly, always ordering the same chicken curry. During one visit, she pulled Mark aside. There's something special about this place, she said earnestly. It's not just the food, it's the heart behind it. You've created a real community here. Her words stayed with Mark long after she left. For the first time in months, he felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Taste of Hope wasn't failing after all. Maybe it was exactly what the neighborhood needed. A place where kindness mattered as much as flavor, where everyone was welcomed with open arms. As the days turned into weeks, the restaurant continued to evolve. Sarah's organizational skills streamlined operations, making tasks like inventory management and cleaning schedules more efficient. With her help, Mark was able to focus more on cooking and interacting with customers. Ethan, too, played a role, entertaining patrons with his quirky stories and infectious enthusiasm. What had once been a struggling business was slowly transforming into something extraordinary. Through it all, Mark realized that success wasn't measured solely by profits. It was about impact, the difference you made in people's lives. Seeing the smiles on customers' faces, knowing he was providing a safe haven for Sarah and Ethan, and witnessing the ripple effect of kindness spreading throughout the community, gave him a sense of fulfillment he'd never experienced before. And so, a new chapter began, not just for Mark but for Sarah, Ethan, and everyone lucky enough to step foot inside Taste of Hope. Little did they know, their journey was only getting started. As the weeks passed, Taste of Hope began to transform in ways Mark could never have imagined. What had started as a struggling restaurant on the brink of failure was now blossoming into something vibrant and full of life. Sarah's presence brought structure and efficiency to the daily operations, while Ethan's curiosity and charm added warmth that customers couldn't resist. However, challenges still loomed large, and Mark knew they needed more than determination to keep the momentum going. One afternoon, as Mark reviewed the month's expenses, his heart sank. The numbers told a grim story. Supplier costs were rising, utility bills were climbing, and despite the increase in customers, profits remained razor-thin. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "How are we supposed to keep this place running?" he muttered under his breath. Sarah overheard him from across the room. She walked over, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out," she said confidently. "Together." Her words gave Mark a sliver of hope, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being overwhelmed. That evening, after Ethan fell asleep on a makeshift bed in the corner, Sarah sat down with Mark at one of the tables. "Let's brainstorm," she suggested. "There must be ways to cut costs without sacrificing quality." They spent hours discussing ideas, bouncing thoughts off each other like old friends. Sarah's background as a nurse came in handy when she pointed out that many restaurants wasted food unnecessarily. "What if we planned meals based on what ingredients are freshest or closest to expiring?" she proposed. "It'll save money and reduce waste." Mark nodded, impressed by her insight. "That's smart," he said. "But where do we get those fresh ingredients cheaply?" Sarah smiled knowingly. "Local farmers' markets," she replied. "I've seen stalls selling produce at much lower prices than suppliers. Plus, supporting local businesses is good for the community." The next morning, Mark and Sarah visited the nearby farmers' market. They struck up conversations with vendors, explaining their mission and asking for discounts. To their surprise, many were eager to help. One farmer offered crates of slightly bruised tomatoes at half price, while another provided bundles of herbs nearing the end of their shelf life. By the time they returned to the restaurant, their arms were laden with fresh, affordable ingredients. With these new resources, Mark revamped the menu. Together, he and Sarah created healthier options. Inspired by her knowledge of nutrition, they introduced dishes like grilled vegetable wraps, quinoa salads, and hearty lentil soups, all priced affordably to cater to families struggling financially. Customers loved the changes, praising not only the flavors but also the thoughtfulness behind them. To further support the community, Mark implemented a pay-what-you-can policy. On certain days, customers could contribute whatever they could afford for their meals. Some paid the suggested price, others left extra as donations, and a few simply wrote heartfelt notes of gratitude. This initiative resonated deeply with the neighborhood, drawing in locals who appreciated the restaurant's compassion and inclusivity. Ethan, too, played an integral role in the transformation. His love for cooking grew stronger with each passing day, and Mark encouraged him to express his creativity. One afternoon, as Mark prepared lasagna, Ethan piped up, "Why don't we make a kids' menu? Something fun for kids like me." Mark grinned. "That's a great idea. What would you put on it?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "Superhero sandwiches," he exclaimed. "And dragon breath burgers. They're spicy, so they feel like fire coming out of your mouth." Laughing, Mark agreed to let Ethan design the menu. Over the next few days, they worked together, testing recipes and naming dishes. When the kids' menu launched, it became an instant hit. Children begged their parents to visit Taste of Hope just to try the Dragon Breath Burger or the Rainbow Veggie Wrap. Parents appreciated the playful names and the fact that the meals were both nutritious and delicious. Despite these successes, challenges persisted. One day, a supplier unexpectedly raised the cost of flour, threatening to disrupt their ability to bake bread, a staple of the menu. Frustrated, Mark considered cutting the item altogether, but Sarah had another idea. "Why not ask customers if they'd like to pitch in?" she suggested. "People care about this place. They might be willing to help." Mark hesitated, unsure whether such a request would come across as desperate, but Sarah insisted, reminding him of how much the community already supported them. Reluctantly, he posted a note on social media explaining the situation, and inviting patrons to contribute toward purchasing flour. Within hours, donations poured in, not just from regulars, but also from strangers who had heard about Taste of Hope's mission. The generosity of the community amazed Mark. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the connections they had built. People wanted to be part of something meaningful, and Taste of Hope had become exactly that, a beacon of hope in a world often clouded by hardship. As the restaurant gained popularity, so did its reputation for kindness. Local artists approached Mark, offering to paint murals on the walls to brighten up the space. Musicians volunteered to perform during weekends, filling the air with soothing melodies. Chefs from nearby establishments hosted free cooking workshops, teaching aspiring cooks like Ethan tips and tricks of the trade. Slowly but surely, Taste of Hope evolved into more than just a restaurant. It became a hub of creativity, connection, and collaboration. One particularly memorable evening, a group of volunteers organized a fundraising event to secure permanent housing for Sarah and Ethan. The entire neighborhood showed up, bringing homemade desserts, organizing raffles, and even performing skits to entertain the crowd. By the end of the night, they had raised enough money to cover several months of rent for a cozy apartment near the restaurant. When Mark broke the news to Sarah, tears streamed down her face. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, hugging him tightly. Ethan jumped up and down excitedly, shouting, "Does this mean we get to stay close to you and the restaurant?" Mark laughed, ruffling the boy's hair. "Of course, you're part of this family now." With stable housing secured, Sarah focused on rebuilding her career. Encouraged by Mark, she enrolled in online courses to update her nursing credentials. Balancing work at the restaurant with her studies wasn't easy, but she persevered, driven by the dream of reclaiming stability for her family. Ethan thrived in this supportive environment, excelling in school and developing a passion for culinary arts. He proudly declared that one day he would open his own restaurant alongside Mark. Through it all, Mark realized that success wasn't just about profit, it was about impact. Seeing the smiles on people's faces and knowing he was making a difference gave him a sense of fulfillment he'd never experienced before. Every challenge they faced became an opportunity to grow, innovate, and strengthen their bond with the community. And so, Taste of Hope continued to flourish, not just as a business, but as a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and teamwork. Little did they know their journey was far from over. With each new day came fresh possibilities, proving that even the smallest acts of compassion could create waves of change. As months turned into a year, Taste of Hope became more than just a restaurant. It was a symbol of unity and resilience. The little eatery that once struggled to stay afloat had transformed into a thriving hub for the community. People from all walks of life gathered there, not only to enjoy delicious meals but also to connect, share stories, and support one another. Mark, Sarah, and Ethan were at the heart of this transformation, their journey inspiring everyone around them. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled in the breeze outside, Mark stood behind the counter preparing coffee. The restaurant buzzed with activity, locals chatting over breakfast, children laughing as they colored on paper placemats, and volunteers setting up tables for an upcoming event. It was hard to believe that just a year ago, this place had been on the verge of closing down. Now it felt alive, vibrant, and full of purpose. Sarah walked in, carrying a stack of flyers advertising the weekend's free cooking workshop. She looked healthier and happier than she had when she first arrived at the restaurant. Her nursing credentials were almost complete, and she had begun volunteering at a nearby clinic during her free time. Despite her busy schedule, she still made sure to help out at Taste of Hope whenever possible. Today, she wore a bright smile as she handed out flyers to customers. "Don't forget to sign up," she said cheerfully. "Chef Mark is teaching how to make perfect lasagna." Ethan trailed behind her, holding a tray of freshly baked cookies. At 12 years old, he had grown into a confident young boy who loved being part of the restaurant. He greeted customers by name, refilled water, glasses without being asked, and occasionally joined Mark in the kitchen to whip up creative dishes. His latest invention, a peanut butter and banana sandwich topped with honey, had become a fan favorite among kids. The ripple effect of kindness continued to spread far beyond the walls of Taste of Hope. One customer, Lisa, who had visited regularly since the early days, decided to take action after witnessing the restaurant's impact. She organized a fundraising campaign to renovate the space, raising enough money to repaint the walls, install new lighting, and even add a small outdoor seating area. When the renovations were complete, the restaurant looked brighter and more inviting than ever before. Local businesses began partnering with Taste of Hope to amplify its mission. A bakery donated leftover bread every evening, which Mark used to prepare soups and sandwiches for the following day. A grocery store provided surplus fruits and vegetables, ensuring the menu remained fresh and affordable. Even schools started bringing students to the restaurant for field trips, where Mark and Ethan taught them about healthy eating and the joy of cooking. Despite these successes, challenges still arose. One particularly difficult winter, a severe storm caused power outages across the city. Many residents were left without heat or food, including some of the restaurant's regular patrons. Determined to help, Mark, Sarah, and Ethan worked tirelessly to serve hot meals using portable stoves and generators borrowed from neighbors. They opened the restaurant's doors to anyone in need, turning it into a temporary shelter filled with warmth and comfort. During those chaotic days, something remarkable happened. Strangers came together to lend a hand. Some brought blankets and clothes, others delivered canned goods, and a few volunteered to cook alongside Mark. The sense of camaraderie was palpable, reminding everyone that even in the darkest times, humanity could shine through. As spring returned, so did a renewed sense of hope. Sarah graduated from her nursing program and secured a part-time job at the clinic. Though she no longer needed financial assistance, she refused to leave Taste of Hope entirely. "This place saved us," she told Mark one evening as they cleaned up after closing. "I want to keep giving back." So she continued helping out on weekends, mentoring other volunteers, and sharing her knowledge of nutrition with the team. Ethan, too, found his own way to contribute. Inspired by the workshops Chef Mark hosted, he began teaching mini cooking classes for kids. Armed with aprons and spatulas, the children learned how to make simple recipes like fruit salads and grilled cheese sandwiches. Ethan's enthusiasm was contagious, and soon parents were signing their kids up weeks in advance. Watching him interact with the children, Mark couldn't help but feel proud. "You're going to be an amazing chef someday," he told Ethan one afternoon as they washed dishes together. But perhaps the most profound change was in the community itself. Taste of Hope had become a catalyst for kindness, encouraging people to pay it forward in their own lives. Customers who received free meals during tough times later returned to volunteer or donate. Artists who painted murals on the walls inspired others to beautify neglected spaces in the neighborhood. Musicians who performed for free concerts encouraged local youth to pursue their passions. One day, a man named James walked into the restaurant. He introduced himself as someone who had once been homeless and had relied on Taste of Hope for meals during his lowest moments. Now he owned a small construction business and wanted to give back. "You helped me when I needed it most," he said, shaking Mark's hand. "Let me fix that leaky roof for you. It's the least I can do." Stories like James's became common, each one reinforcing the idea that compassion breeds compassion. The restaurant wasn't just feeding bodies, it was nourishing souls and fostering a culture of empathy and gratitude. By the end of the year, Taste of Hope had become a cornerstone of the community. People celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays there. Families held reunions, friends gathered for game nights, and strangers formed lifelong bonds over shared meals. The restaurant's impact extended far beyond its four walls, proving that a single act of kindness could create endless possibilities. Mark often reflected on how far they had come. What started as a random decision to help a struggling mother and her son had blossomed into something extraordinary. He realized that success wasn't measured by profit margins or accolades. It was about the lives touched and the connections forged. Every smile, every thank you note, and every hug reminded him why he had opened the restaurant in the first place. And yet, Mark knew their journey wasn't finished. There were always more people to help, more ideas to explore, and more dreams to chase. With Sarah and Ethan by his side, he felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together they had built something truly special, a legacy of hope that would endure for generations to come. As the sun set over the city, casting a warm glow through the windows of Taste of Hope, Mark looked around at the bustling room. Laughter echoed off the freshly painted walls, music played softly in the background, and the scent of freshly baked bread wafted through the air. In that moment, he knew they had created something far greater than a restaurant. They had created a home. Years passed, and Taste of Hope stood as a testament to the power of compassion, resilience, and community. What had once been a struggling restaurant on the brink of failure had grown into a thriving institution that inspired everyone who stepped through its doors. Mark, now in his early 40s, looked back on the journey with a mixture of pride and gratitude. The little eatery had become more than just a business. It was a beacon of hope, a place where people came not only for food, but also for connection, support, and inspiration. Mark himself had changed over the years. The stress and uncertainty that once weighed heavily on him had given way to a deep sense of purpose. He no longer worried about empty tables or unpaid bills. Instead, he focused on making a difference in the lives of others. Watching Sarah and Ethan rebuild their lives had taught him an invaluable lesson, that success wasn't measured by profit margins but by the impact you made on the world around you. Sarah, too, had transformed. After completing her nursing program, she secured a full-time position at a nearby hospital. Though her days were busy, she still found time to volunteer at Taste of Hope, mentoring new staff members and helping organize events. Her confidence had soared, and she radiated strength and positivity. She often joked that she owed her second chance at life to Mark's kindness, though everyone knew it was her own determination that had truly turned things around. Ethan, now a teenager, had blossomed into a bright and ambitious young man. His love for cooking had only grown stronger, and he spent every summer interning under Mark, learning the intricacies of running a restaurant. Together, they experimented with recipes, tested new dishes, and dreamed up creative ways to engage customers. Ethan's passion for culinary arts became evident when he won first prize at a local cooking competition with his signature dish, a fusion of lasagna and curry, aptly named Hope Rolls. It quickly became one of the restaurant's most popular items. The ripple effect of Mark's initial act of kindness continued to expand. Taste of Hope had become a cornerstone of the community, drawing people from all walks of life. Families celebrated milestones there, friends gathered for casual dinners, and strangers formed lifelong bonds over shared meals. The restaurant's walls were adorned with colorful murals painted by local artists, while musicians performed live music during weekends. Every corner of the space buzzed with energy and warmth. One particularly memorable evening, the restaurant hosted its annual Night of Gratitude, an event dedicated to celebrating the people who had supported them along the way. The room was packed with familiar faces, customers, volunteers, suppliers, and neighbors, all eager to share stories of how Taste of Hope had touched their lives. Lisa, the middle-aged woman who had visited weekly since the early days, stood up to speak. "When I first walked into this restaurant, I didn't expect much," she began, her voice trembling with emotion. "But what I found here changed me forever. This isn't just a place to eat. It's a place where kindness is served alongside every meal. Mark, Sarah, and Ethan have shown us what it means to care for one another, to lift each other up, and to believe in the goodness of humanity." Her words brought tears to many eyes, including Mark's. As the evening went on, more people shared their experiences, how the restaurant had provided shelter during storms, fed them when they were hungry, and offered a listening ear when they needed it most. Each story reinforced the idea that Taste of Hope was far more than a restaurant. It was a movement, a symbol of unity and resilience. Despite its success, challenges still arose. Rising costs, supply shortages, and unexpected repairs tested their resolve. But these obstacles only strengthened their bond with the community. When a pipe burst in the kitchen one winter, flooding the entire space, Neighbors rallied together to help. Volunteers cleaned up the mess, plumbers worked pro bono, and donations poured in to cover repair expenses. Within weeks, the restaurant was back in operation, better than ever. As Ethan prepared to graduate high school, he announced his plans to attend culinary school. "I want to open my own restaurant someday," he declared proudly during a family dinner at Taste of Hope. "A place like this, one where people feel welcome, no matter who they are or where they come from." Mark beamed with pride. "You'll do amazing things, kid," he said, raising his glass in a toast. "And when you're ready, I'll be right there beside you." Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. Looking around the table at Mark and Ethan, she realized how much they had all grown together. They weren't just survivors, they were thrivers, proof that even in the darkest times light could shine through. Taste of Hope's legacy extended beyond its physical space. Its mission inspired others to create similar initiatives in neighboring towns. People opened shelters, organized food drives, and launched programs to help those in need. The restaurant's name became synonymous with kindness and community, a reminder that even small acts of generosity could spark monumental change. On the 10th anniversary of Taste of Hope, the City Council honored Mark, Sarah, and Ethan with a special award for their contributions to the community. Standing on stage, surrounded by cheering crowds, Mark reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "This isn't my story," he said humbly. "It's ours. Every person who walked through our doors, every hand that reached out to help, every heart that believed in us. We did this together." The crowd erupted in applause, echoing his sentiment. As fireworks lit up the night sky, Mark looked out at the sea of smiling faces. He thought about the woman and boy he had invited inside on that cold winter night so many years ago. Little did he know then that his simple act of kindness would lead to something so extraordinary. Today, Taste of Hope stands as a shining example of what can happen when people come together with love, determination, and a shared vision. It reminds us that no matter how difficult life may seem, hope is always within reach. And sometimes it tastes like lasagna, smells like fresh bread, and feels like home. And so, the legacy of Mark, Sarah, and Ethan lives on, a testament to the power of empathy, collaboration, and unwavering belief in the goodness of humanity. Their story proves that even in the face of adversity, dreams can become reality, struggles can turn into triumphs, and a single act of kindness can ignite a chain reaction of positivity that lasts a lifetime.